Genealogical Society.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And welcome to Extreme Genes, America's family history show on extremegenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. And this segment of the show is brought to you by rootsmagic.com. And I'm very excited about our guest today on the show for two segments. His name is Michael Henderson. He is of Creole and African-American extraction. And for 30 years, he's been researching his ancestors and has actually found 6 documented revolutionary soldiers, and he's made some history himself. You're going to want to hear his story. It's written up in a great book. That's coming up a little bit later on in the show. And just a reminder, by the way, if you want to keep track of the show, catch some of our older episodes, you can do it not only through our podcasts at extremegenes.com, but also through our newsletter, The Weekly Genie. It's absolutely free. We'd be thrilled to have you sign up for it at extremegenes.com. But right now, let's, I want to go to Boston, but I know he's not there. It's David Allen Lambert, the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. You are on the road today.
I am. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky at the National Society of the Sons of the American Revolution.
Now, you've recently joined the SAR and become something of an officer, right?
I am now the curator for the state of Massachusetts for the SAR, correct.
Boy, they put you right to work, didn't they? By the way, we got to work on how you say Louisville.
Louisville.
Yeah, they don't say Louisville there. No, it's Louisville. Almost like you have a mouthful of something.
Well, nobody's thrown anything at me yet. So is it true that you've been burning the midnight oil looking up relatives again, Fish?
You've seen some of my late emails and tweets, right?
I have.
It's just been amazing. I found this page from a religious record dating back to 1807 in Eastchester, New York. And it showed a whole bunch of relatives on there and many others all clumped together, which helped prove some of the things that I've been trying to put together about one side of the family or another. But here's the weird thing about it, David. About 1/3 of the people on this sheet have a cross next to them. Okay?
Oh.
And it's turned out that the people with the cross are all related. And not just to the one family name line that I've been looking at, but to the other side of the family as well. It's almost like they left breadcrumbs for me to work on. And I got 2 other people around the country who are working with me on this, and we're all blown away because we're starting to break down some walls as a result of this one document. So it's very cool.
There's more than one genealogist losing sleep over this problem, apparently.
Yeah, I was the last one down last night. Hit it at about 1:30 in the morning. I'm paying for it today. All right, let's find out what's going on with the Family Histoire news today. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm going to start in St. Louis, Missouri, where Charlesetta Taylor, an 81-year-old, was given a reprieve. She gets to have her home, which was now moved for her.
What? They moved the house for her?
They did 7/10 of a mile to make room for a billion-dollar government complex, and she fought it, and they paid for the move, and they moved all the electrical and everything, and there her house now sits. This 2-story home made out of brick was up and lifted and moved. So who says you can't take it with you to your new place?
I guess she just changed addresses, basically, right? Same house, different locale.
Exactly. It fared pretty well for a 122-year-old brick home.
Incredible.
Well, you think at 99 you wouldn't have to worry about grandma and grandpa getting in trouble? Well, in the Netherlands, a lady by the name of Annie has something off of her bucket list. She got arrested.
What?
Well, according to local police, she wanted to experience a police cell from within. An officer shares photos of the arrest on Facebook. Annie looked like she was having a great time, even while handcuffed.
Wow. Why would she want that on her bucket list? Maybe she's done everything else in her life, right?
That's true. I don't think that needs to be on my bucket list. I don't know about you, Fish.
No.
In Alta, California, a story that began back in 1782 when Spanish soldiers and their families traveled out there, there has been a reoccurrence. This is a reoccurrence of a family getting married in the same parish 200-odd years later. Congratulations to Jacqueline Berniard and Josh Briner of Santa Barbara, who had gotten engaged, and then they decided decided to change the location of the wedding and decided to pick El Presidio Real Chapel.
Okay.
Well, here's the really interesting thing on this. After they booked the Presidio, Josh, who is an 8th-generation Santa Barbara resident, learned that his own ancestor, Callisto and Feliz, first got married in that chapel.
Really?
And they were actually the first couple to be married there. And this is over 200 years ago.
Yeah, I think the number is actually 230, and they use the same altar, which is incredible.
It really is. So, people often have to go back to where their ancestors were married. Well, this couple got married where their ancestor was married.
Wow.
It's amazing sometimes when you walk into, may it be a church, a cemetery, you have that feeling like you've been there before. And to find out that you are getting married at the same place where your ancestor did, but not plan it that way,
yeah.
It's really strange.
That is really a bizarre thing.
Of course, the story is on extremegenes.com. It almost makes me hope that my daughters will want to get married at one of the churches. Maybe not in England. That will cost me too much. Well, down the street where we went to back in the 50s.
There you go. Much cheaper.
In the Blogger Spotlight this week, we are featuring Randy Seaver of California in his blog, geneamusings.com. Randy has long been a fixture in the genealogy community and is always entertained with his blog. It's both entertaining and informative. On this week's blog, he talks about the most popular databases on Ancestry.com, so you can go through the top 10 list from public family trees that has over 2 billion records to the 1940 census to U.S. city directories to the 1930 census. Well, I'll let you go to Genie Musings and see the rest of that top 10. So check out a new blog each week, and we'll have a new spotlight for you next week. By the way, I just want to say, if you haven't taken advantage of American Ancestor's offer for Extreme Genes listeners, Genies, if you use the code EXTREME, you'll save $20, and you can become a member of the oldest genealogical society in America, AmericanAncestors.org, brought to you by the New England Historic Genealogical Society in Boston, where I've called home for 24 years.
Very nice, David. All right, well, listen, have a safe trip, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Very good.
And coming up next, we're going to talk to Michael Henderson. He's an African-American Creole, European. He's got an incredible story to tell you. It's coming up next in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Did you know that Family Search Family Tree is available through a powerful new mobile app experience? That's right. Now you can view, edit, and even add information to ancestors in your family tree whenever and wherever you are. You no longer need to wait to get home or make a date with your computer to view or update your family tree. You can add details to your tree when visiting with family or when capturing details from a trip to the cemetery. You can share new family history discoveries from classroom settings. You can even make the most of your time when waiting for doctor appointments or car repairs. Get started today by downloading the free Family Search Family Tree app to your Apple or Android device. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to get the Family Tree app for free. Exploring and expanding your family tree has never been more convenient. Visit familysearch.org/tree app to download the Family Search Family Tree mobile app today.
Well, Genies, my personal family history researcher who sends me new information day and night has sent me some incredible new records and newspaper stories lately. Hi, it's Fisher, and the name of that researcher, by the way, is myheritage.com. It's the hardest working service in genealogy, looking for records of your family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yes, even while you're sleeping. How does it work? MyHeritage uses hundreds of algorithms to match your ancestors to over 5 billion records from around the world, and with 97% accuracy. That means no more wasting time figuring out whether or not a match really is a match. I hear from listeners all the time who are shocked with how much information is accurately found and then passed along. And now MyHeritage will translate your ancestors' names into English or any other language you like from foreign records. In fact, it works with over 40 languages. No one else does this. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned researcher, you need myheritage.com.
Legacy Tree Genealogists is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries. legacytree.com.
And we are back. It's America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and extremegenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. This segment of our show is brought to you by legacytree.com. Of course, in recent weeks, we've been telling you a lot about our adventures at Roots Tech, the world's largest family history conference in Salt Lake City, Utah, in early February. And one of the interesting people I met there was this guy, Michael Henderson from Atlanta, Georgia. He's on the line with me right now. Hi, Michael. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Well, hi, Scott. It's good to be here, and thanks for having me today.
Michael has an incredible story where he basically started like most of us do, with a little bit of interest, the stories from his relatives that kind of tweaked that spark early on in his life, and what an adventure you've had. Let's just start at the beginning, Michael. How did you get going? What were the stories you were hearing that made you say, I got to find out more about this?
Well, actually, it started as me as being a young child, having a conversation with my mom. I can remember being about 9 years old, and we were just basically talking about the various family members. And she mentioned her mother's maiden name and her father's surname, but the mother's maiden name sparked an interest, and that part of the curiosity that kind of started everything. The maiden name was Mathieu. It's a French surname, and I wanted to know more about it, and that's where I got started, right there with being curious.
As an African-American with a French name, that's kind of a different path, isn't it?
Well, that right there was part of the whole exploration of, Mom, where did this name come from, and how did the family get the surname? And because it was on her mother's side of the family, I've been successful with being able to document and trace my ancestry back to a group of individuals known as Creoles here in Louisiana. And so I asked her, I said, where did the name come from? Where was it derived? And I asked her how to spell it, because it didn't sound like the normal English version of Matthew. And we got into this discussion, and she mentioned to me that she realized that the family was French Creole, and they had this French ancestry or ancestral connection. But that was about all she knew. She didn't know the particulars. But what she told me was that when she was only 6 years old, her mother passed away. And so my mom, as a 6-year-old child, and I, as a 9-year-old child, I realized then there was a special moment for me. So that was the genesis of it starting. But all throughout my life, I've been one of the curious ones in the family.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, by the way, here in Louisiana, because you're visiting New Orleans, you're visiting your hometown right now with the family, and you're lucky because you got both of your folks still with you. So I would imagine you're still collecting stories, yes?
Last night we had a family gathering here, and some of the cousins came over that I hadn't seen in many, many years. I'm the oldest of 8, but I have some other cousins that came over to see my wife and I, and we just got to talking, and some of the stories started coming out. And I told my wife, I said, pay close attention, because this is where you get the cream, the gems, and you're going to find out some additional information I haven't even told you yet. So just keep your ears open and be the fly on the wall.
You were talking in your book. You've written a fabulous book, by the way, incredibly well written for this type of book, I will say right now, because a lot of people, if they're genealogists, they can get into the book. But I think this book is so accessible to anybody who might have an interest in this, and just the history and the sleuthing side of it, because you really took this thing back, interviewing cousins you didn't even know about. Talk about this unique cousin that your mother introduced you to and what she shared with you.
As I mentioned earlier, my mom and I had a discussion about the family and the origin of the family. And when she told me that when she lost her mother at 6 years old, she being sick, she said, well, I have some other cousins and some family members I'm going to take you over and we'll have a conversation with that person. And it just so happened it was the family historian, all unbeknownst to me at the time. And so she invited us over to her home, and we sat down for a few minutes, and I shared as much as I knew about the family because I started gathering, collecting. This is much later in life. I told her all the things that I was interested in learning. This is what I had uncovered. And was there anything else she could provide me? She gave me 3 items. She gave me a wire diagram of some family members, and it was basically a bunch of names generations back. She gave me a picture of my mother's parents, which was my mother's grandparents.
Wow.
And she gave me a piece of oral history. Now, all of this came about through this discussion, interviewing this person over a period of a few minutes as we were communicating. But the piece of information was a bit of oral history that I guess she held close to her heart because, again, it's the kind of stuff that you don't just talk about openly to anyone. And it was that part of the family secret I learned later on. But they wouldn't allow us to use Daddy's last name, and this was the progenitor of this particular family line that I stumbled upon. And she said, she told me, she said, Cher, you're about to jump into some areas that the family don't talk about very much, so be careful as you're asking various people, bits and pieces of information that you come across. But I see the process in which you're going about, you're really serious about this. But so take this along, and maybe this can help you further your research. Basically, that's what kind of propelled me to dig even deeper, to put the names together, to find the documentation, to clarify some of the understanding or misunderstanding that came about. And the result turned out my discovery of a 4th-generation grandparents, male and female, who lived during the French and Spanish colonial periods in Louisiana's history.
So you have quite a mix then between the Creoles, the Europeans that came in, and the black slaves and free blacks as well, right? Talk a little about that, because I know you have a very unique story concerning one of your 18th century ancestors.
Well, the story itself involves a 4th-generation grandmother named Agnes. She was born during the French period of Louisiana's history from 1699 to 1783. She was born about 1758 in St. Charles Parish, about 30 miles north of the city of New Orleans. And her relationship with a Frenchman who was born in Marseille, France, wound up in Spanish Louisiana around between 1765 and 1770. They formed this relationship in the city of New Orleans, and he actually assisted her with gaining her freedom. She was actually manumitted December 16, 1779, after having gone through a year-long court battle with her former owner. And it turned out that the Spanish colonial governor, Bernardo Galvez, had to sign her manumission document because they weren't able to come to an agreement, but Spain allowed enslaved individuals to self-purchase themselves. And Agnes came up with her money, the resources, based on the amount that was said. She came up with that value, and she was able to get her freedom with the signature of Bernardo Galvez and our French consort.
But to me, the amazing thing was you actually got to find and hold that document.
Yes, indeed. It was a manumission document discovered at the New Orleans Notarial Archives here in the city of New Orleans. The actual document is still in the possession of the Notarial Archive. So I was able to get a Xerox copy of it, and it's about an 8-page document because there was some process. There's a process that they had to go through, a tribunal that was set up because her former owner would not allow her to go free. That document itself held in its pages some interesting dynamics of who all was involved and what actually happened in the final analysis. So that was one of 4 documents that actually helped me to really understand the story itself.
Wow, what an incredible journey this has been. How has this affected some of your other cousins, the people that you're getting to know better as you age?
Well, the thing about it, all of them are finding it to be very interested. This particular cousin that became the kind of like the keeper of the records and seals and things like that, she held this information close to her heart because it was a badge of shame. Agnes and Matthew were not able to marry because of the laws of the time, the black codes, Code Noir. They were forbidden to marry. So what Agnes did was she took his first name, Mathieu, and used it as the family surname. That's how the name came into existence as a derived name locally. but the family surname is DeVoe, which was from Marseille, France. And the family didn't know that. All they knew that there was a relationship between this enslaved woman and this white European, and that was it. And that kept on for 5 generations till his 9-year-old kid came along and asked his mother, why is the name spelled Mathieu? Where did the name come from? And again, I was able to uncover the essence of the story itself. But what was most interesting about that entire journey and discovery was what else I found. This guy, Mathieu, who helped her gain her freedom, had a unique part to play in that whole story. I also found out that he was part of the local militia in the city of New Orleans, serving under the command of the Spanish colonial governor, Bernardo Galvez, who happened to turn out to be a patriot of the American Revolution. So now I needed to figure out a way to tell the story, how I was going to educate the reading audience that was going to read my story, to give an appreciation about Louisiana history, American history, and how my 2 ancestors came together.
And yet when I read your book, I hear how much you hated history when you were a kid, just as I did. It was the family history that got me interested in history in general.
That's what I'm trying to express now as I talk to various groups. That if you want to get a kid really interested in American history, make them connect American history to their own history. Let them learn about their own individual history and work back to the period of time, if they're fortunate enough to do, so that that history comes alive to them. I was like all the other kids. Basically, I studied the history, made the grade, but I didn't really care for, memorizing a lot of facts and figures. It wasn't until I got older where I started to really appreciate the value of knowing one's history. And that's what I try to capture in my book, Got Proof, my genealogical journey through the use of documentation and how that all came about.
And as a naval officer, of course, this had to really kind of fill you with a little bit of pride to find that you had ancestors who were part of the revolution, yes?
That was also genesis that as I got older, I wanted to really trace back my military lineage in terms of the males in my family who served in the military. My father served in Korea. His father served in World War I. I came across several ancestors that fought during the Civil War. One I came across that actually served in the Confederacy. Then there were several that served at the Battle of New Orleans under General Jackson, part of the 1st Battalion Freemen of Color.
We're going to find out more about this and talk about your revolutionary ancestors and where that led you, coming up when we return in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Scientific studies have proven that youth who know even a little bit about their family history perform better academically and have a greater sense of personal confidence and stability. Genealogy is its own incredible superpower that arms our children with super strength. But how do you get your child or grandchild interested in studying their family history? That kind of stuff is just for grandmas, right? Not anymore. ZapTheGrandmaGap.com leaps the generation gap in a single bound. Author Janet Hovorka provides you with useful and timely advice on helping the young people in your life become engaged in their own family history. Janet has an entire collection of books to inspire the young and the young at heart in fun, interactive ways. She also offers creative tips and advice on her blog and in her free weekly newsletter. Stop by ZapTheGrandmaGap.com today to sign up for Janet's free email newsletter with 52 weeks of easy tips, free downloads, and order your set of resource books and workbooks. Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style of genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
And we are back. It's America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. Fisher here, your Radio Root Sleuth. This segment is brought to you by MyHeritage.com. And on the phone with me right now from his hometown in New Orleans, Louisiana, it's Michael Henderson. He's the author of the book, Got Proof: My Genealogical Journey Through the Use of Documentation. This is an incredible story for somebody who is African-American. And as we all know, Mike, that is just a very difficult path for a lot of researchers, especially when you get back beyond 1870 and the manumission of the slaves at that time. But you have gotten back well into the 18th century through your Creole lines and have found how many revolutionary ancestors?
Well, Scott, I've identified 10 Revolutionary War ancestors that served under the Spanish colonial governor Bernardo de Galvez, and I've actually documented through the Lineage Society, the National Society Sons of the American Revolution, 6. I'm working on 4 others as I gather the documentation and finding the necessary records to compile that information.
And so how's that been working out for you? You mentioned the SAR. Historically, you kind of made your own mark in Georgia, which is where you live now, joining the SAR, the first African-American in your chapter, yes? Or in the entire state?
Actually, I'm the first African-American in the state of Georgia and the society in Georgia. It was not by accident. I basically found out when I was getting inducted that I was going to become the first African-American of the Georgia Society, and it was all because I happened to be living in Georgia at the time. My ancestors from Louisiana served in Louisiana, and I was really trying to get into a chapter in Louisiana. But I was advised that locally to join a local chapter where I could participate in the various events that goes on there. So I'm happy to say that happened all of a sudden, and I'm proud to be the first one to become a member.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would wonder, how were you received in the Deep South, being the first?
It was open arms. I haven't had any problems. Just like everyone that get into an organization like the SAR, it's through documented evidence or documenting your ancestral lineage back to a patriot of the American Revolution. I did just like everyone else. As far as being the first, again, there was a lot of curiosity of how could I have done this? Who was the person? Everybody automatically assumed my ancestor was an African-American patriot of the American Revolution. It just so happened that all 6 of my ancestors that have been documented are white Europeans. So that in itself was a challenge of trying to put that story together through documented evidence, which I was successful in being able to do.
That's incredible. Tell us about some of the ancestors.
Well, I have this one ancestor from Marseille, France, who arrived in Louisiana, happened to be a merchant, came to Louisiana during the Spanish period, and wound up in the Spanish militia. I've located a French-Canadian ancestor who came down from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, born in Montreal, came down to Louisiana, and I happened to find him in one of the militias out in St. John the Baptist Parish, out about 30 miles north of the city of New Orleans. 2 other ancestors that were locally born in St. Charles Parish, one a father and a son, were both old enough at the time. They are of a German-Swedish extraction. Their father was a German-Swedish officer, and both sons were officers also, and they served in the local St. Charles militia. There is a German ancestor that I came across also that I was able to document through this particular lineage. And so when I found my bloodline connection to these persons and their participation in service under the Spanish colonial governor Bernardo Galvez, I went forth to document that and submitted that to the Sons of the American Revolution as a third-party adjudicator. And everything checked out in terms of my bloodline, and I wanted to get them recognized for their service and participation.
Absolutely. And, you're absolutely right. One of the things that I enjoy about being a member of the Sons of the American Revolution is that you get that third party to validate your research. And I've done that with the Society of Mayflower Descendants as well, because a lot of people can make claims that pass down the family. And then people say, well, they say that we have ancestors who did this or do that. But when they can actually prove that and make that proof stick, then that's a really valuable thing to have as far as passing down your family history with confidence that what you're giving them is absolutely true.
That is so correct. And one of the things for me as an African American, being able to connect my ancestor to the American Revolution through the service of ancestors who served outside the 13 colonies, it gives me a chance as a living memorial to those ancestors to be able to speak on their behalf in terms of acknowledging the fact that they were there, they participated, and this was the service and contribution to this country that our family provided to make this America the way it is today. It's almost multiracial, multicultural, and it has given me a sense of pride at understanding that how valuable that is from an inspiration standpoint.
And then in time, you became the leader of your group there in Georgia, yes?
Yes, the local chapter that I joined, the Button Gwinnett chapter of the Georgia Society, Sons of the American Revolution, a couple years later, I assumed the role of the president of that particular chapter, another first, because, again, being the first African-American in the state, I became the first African-American male to assume a position as a chapter president. So, again, each one of the things that I do within the organization, it becomes a first because, again, I'm the only one.
Absolutely. And you mentioned before the break that you had an ancestor that fought with Andrew Jackson in New Orleans. Of course, the Battle of New Orleans was, a hallmark in the War of 1812. And in fact, I had an ancestor that was born on the 18th anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans. So they named him Andrew Jackson Fisher.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun to figure that out when I looked at the dates and went, oh, I get it. Okay. So tell us about that ancestor and what role he played in that battle.
His name was Louis Innocent Mathieu, and he was the son of Matthew DeVoe. And as you mentioned, the Battle of New Orleans and the War of 1812 was pretty much the second revolution that the United States participated against Great Britain, and it culminated here in New Orleans. Matter of fact, in 2015, we celebrated the bicentennial of that battle, and I learned of Louis's participation as being part of the 1st Battalion of Freemen of Color, company of about 250 to almost 260 men, one of two companies, the 1st and 2nd Battalion of Freemen of Color, was formed in the city of New Orleans itself. And these men of color, all free, participated under the command of General Jackson at the Battle of New Orleans, right there at Chalmette, right down the road, about 8 miles from where I live. That was an interesting discovery. So I had to go ahead and document him, and that, too, led to my being eligible for another lineage society, the General Society of the War of 1812, which right. I submitted my documentation on that on behalf of him also.
Well, the book is called Got Proof, My Genealogical Journey Through the Use of Documentation. He's Michael Henderson. Where can they get the book, Mike?
Well, the book is sold on Amazon.com. It can also be purchased on my website at michaelnhenderson.com.
I mean, it's a great work, very inspiring, too. Amazing things that you've accomplished over how many years now?
It's been over about 30 years of research, and I'm still in the part of researching, and research never ends. But what this book has allowed me to do is actually get to the end point where I was able to give the journey, the discovery, and the results achieved. So the journey continues on, but this was the result of one particular path that I went down.
This is a great exclamation point on Black History Month, Michael. Thanks so much for your time. Congratulations on the book. I mean, it really is an incredibly well-written book and very inspiring, tough to put down, and a good read, too. It's not really overly long. I think people will really enjoy it.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you also for having me on your show today.
Hey, it's been great. Thanks so much. And coming up next, we're going to talk to our preservation authority, Tom Perry from TMCplace.com, answering your questions about preservation. That's in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
You know, everybody needs a place of their own to plant their family tree, preferably one that no one else can mess with and only you can control. That perfect place is Roots Magic. Roots Magic has been a family history standard for years, and now Roots Magic 7 is on the market. It's an award-winning genealogical software program which makes researching, organizing, and sharing your family history easy. You can start from scratch or import data from other software or even Family Search. Roots Magic also automatically finds records relating to your ancestors from MyHeritage, Family Search, and soon Ancestry and Find My Past. You can use it to create beautiful charts, reports, and books. And have you ever thought about making your own family history website? Roots Magic can make that happen too. And of course, there are free videos, guides, and technical support to help you along. Isn't it about time you planted your family tree? Whether you're a beginning genie or experienced professional, Roots Magic is the perfect tool for you.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andMe.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andMe.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andMe.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andMe.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andMe.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andMe.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andMe.com.
Legacy Tree Genealogist is a proud sponsor of Extreme Genes. Based in Salt Lake City, Utah, near the world's largest family history library, we've been working with genealogists all over the globe since 2004 to track down records, find your ancestors, and the stories that bring your legacy to life. We also analyze DNA test results, help you join lineage societies, and find missing cousins or heirs to property. Legacy Tree is the recommended research partner of MyHeritage.com and is the world's highest client-rated genealogy firm. Call us toll-free at 1-800-818-1476. Call now or register online to get a free estimate. Learn from our free genealogy tips on our blog at legacytree.com/blog. Even experienced researchers can benefit from our proven and experienced staff of specialists who can bring new approaches to old problems. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries. legacytree.com.
And welcome back to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, with Tom Perry from TMCPlace.com, the Preservation Authority. And this segment is brought to you by FamilySearch.org. Hi, Tom. How are you?
Super.
And we've got a great email question here from Agarecio. I don't know how to say that correctly, but I'm taking a shot at it. So hopefully it works. And he says, Tom, I listen to Extreme Genes all the time. I think your show is the best. I have pictures that are stuck together. Ooh, I hate when that happens. He says, one set was left in a glove compartment. The others, I'm not sure what happened. Any advice on how I could separate them, or is this a lost cause? Oh, that is such a painful thing to hear.
Oh, it is. There are no lost causes. Everything, can have something done. It just depends what's the best way to do it. But yes, these photos can be saved. You can send them to us or anybody that's a reputable restorer. And what they can do is they can make the glossy fronts just like they were brand new again, if that's how the finish was. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's ways to do it. A lot of people still do stuff by hand. We do it. I know another place in Utah that does it. There's several throughout the country that can do it. But just make sure when you're doing it and you're interviewing people, like we tell you, if you don't want to send the stuff to us, interview the people and ask them the right kind of questions. Like if this is their first rodeo, go to a different rodeo,
Exactly. Now, what happens when a pile of pictures is put in a glove compartment? What causes them to all stick together like that?
Well, there's a lot of things. Heat can actually break down the emulsion that's on the photo and make them stick together. A lot of times in a car, there's going to be moisture. You could even have a leaky window, and there's going to be a little bit of water leaks in there.
Does humidity affect it too?
Oh, absolutely. Water, humidity, all those things are the worst because what it does is it makes a photo soft again like it was when it was originally developed. And then what they do when they dry out together. We've had people send us in photos that were glued to a glass frame. Same thing, humidity got into there. The photo got soft, which was okay, but then when it dried, it became glued to the glass, or in this case, glued to each other.
Okay, so what does he do?
just looking at the stack that you sent us, I'm guessing you should be paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $100. It's kind of hard to tell without actually seeing them, but basically what we would have to do, or any reputable place would want to delaminate them without destroying the emulsion. So usually it's a water process that's involved in doing that. And then once we get them separated, then we have to re-dry them properly, because if we just leave them on a rack to dry, they're going to curl and look all kinds of awful. Then if you try to straighten them out to scan them, then they're going to crack. So what we have is this great big dryer that's actually chrome. It's polished chrome, and so we put them emulsion side down on those. Then there's a canvas that goes over the top of them that holds them really, really tight, and then it dries them slowly. So what happens is the chrome gives them that shiny finish again, just like they do it at a big place. Because a lot of people think, they go to a place and watch them do their 1 hour photos, and they see these photos coming out dry. They have no idea what's going on in the inside, but it's a wet process. The paper itself is hit with a light, to make it into a positive, and then it goes through a wash bath, all these different kinds of chemicals, and then when it comes out the end, in those big machines, it goes through a polished chrome roller that makes it smooth and gives it some heat to kind of dry them out, and then they come out pretty much flat. But when we do them, they're really, really flat. And what I'd suggest, whether you send them to us or somebody else, make sure that once they're done fixing them, you want to have them scan them at the same time, just in case something between that time to when you would go and scan them yourself, something doesn't happen. And most places aren't going to charge you that much to scan, but even if you have a good scanner, I'd let them do it, get it all done at one place, just to make sure nothing else happens.
Well, how big a pile is it, by the way? I haven't seen the photo.
The photo, it looked like it was a couple inches thick. It was there had to have been 50, possibly 100 photos in there.
Ouch, painful. All right, thanks so much for the email. And, of course, you can always ask Tom at tmcplace.com. All right, what do we have next, Tom?
You know what? Since we're on photos, let's talk a little bit more about photos for the people that want to DIY it, that were really into doing their own thing. We'll talk a little bit about that.
All right, coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Looking for an easy way to show off your family history and share it with your family? Family Chartmasters offers beautiful custom pedigree art pieces and inexpensive family reunion draft charts in any design or size that fits your needs. With a free consultation at FamilyChartmasters.com, you can get started creating a new family masterpiece. Family Chartmasters has over 11 years of experience in creating and printing family charts. They can print any style genealogy chart from any genealogy file and can create exactly what you're looking for. You'll work with a specialized and talented consultant whose goal is to make you happy. Decorative charts make fantastic gifts for all occasions. And with Family Chartmasters' option of ordering duplicate charts at half price along with your original purchase at full price, you can afford to give a family heirloom to each member of your family. Contact Family Chartmasters today at FamilyChartmasters.com for your free consultation. Family Chartmasters will give the greatest care to your family history.
When was the last time you heard your grandmother's voice or saw your family enjoying life back in the 1950s or 60s? If the reason is you haven't known what to do with your old recordings, videos, and films, here's your answer. The Multimedia Center in Salt Lake City.
We brought in a video project to the Multimedia Center, and overnight they duplicated it to DVD so we could meet our deadline.
The Multimedia Center, 2870 East, 3300 South, Salt Lake City. Open Monday through Friday, 10 to 6. Call 801-483-1717 or go to transferduplication.com.
Extreme Genes is sponsored in part by 23andme.com, a personalized genetic service that helps you understand what your 23 pairs of chromosomes, your DNA, say about you. 23andme.com gives you a snapshot view of your DNA with more than 60 detailed reports on your health, traits, and ancestry, plus tools to explore and compare your DNA with family and friends. 23andme.com is the first and only genetic service available directly to you that includes reports that meet FDA standards. Here's how it works. Order your DNA kit from 23andme.com. Provide your saliva sample from home and mail it back to a CLIA-certified lab. Then you'll be notified when your reports are ready online. You'll also receive ongoing reports as new genetic discoveries are made and as 23andme.com is able to clear new reports through the FDA. See why more than 1 million people are experiencing their genetics with 23andme.com. Order your DNA kit today at 23andme.com. 23andme.com.
Genies, it's Fisher with exciting news. The Weekly Genie, the official newsletter of Extreme Genes, is here. It's your Monday morning briefing on what's happening in the world of genealogy and family history and on Extreme Genes. Get all the details of jaw-dropping stories of discovery and keep up with the latest techniques in family history research. Get to know more about your favorite Extreme Genes personalities. And it's free. Sign up for the Weekly Genie now at extremegenes.com or the Extreme Genes Facebook page. And when you do, you'll receive David Allen Lambert's top 10 tips for beginning genealogists from the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society. Sign up today for the Weekly Genie. And we are back. It's our final segment of Extreme Genes for this week, America's Family History Show at extremegenes.com. Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And Tom Perry is with us also from tmcplace.com. He's the preservation authority. Tom, last segment, we were talking about this great question about what happens when all these pictures wind up being stuck together. You can't pull them apart without destroying them. You gave some good advice about how to find somebody to handle that, a professional. But what if you wanted to do it yourself?
Okay, first, if you want to do it yourself, because you can't afford to have us delaminate them for you or somebody else, and I recommend you do not try this unless you have a lot of patience and you're really handy with crafts. So what you can do, you can soak them in water for just long enough to allow them to start to separate. Don't do it and then go cook. You can actually have the emulsion dissolve as well. So you want to really keep an eye on them, keep kind of touch them, see how they're coming apart, but don't force them apart or you're going to be in the same problem. You're going to actually rip the emulsion off. So you want to be really, really careful. The biggest problem with the DIY project is if you don't have a professional chrome dryer, all your photos are not going to be shiny anymore, and you might not care about that because you've got to air dry them, and there's not that chrome cylinder that's going to sit on top of them that's going to give them that glossy finish. So if you have something good like some good clean canvas like you use in crafts to put underneath them, you want to do that. Don't put anything on top of them because, again, the emulsion can get stuck to the canvas or whatever it is. You're actually in a worse situation. So just do them from the bottom. If you want to, you can put like quarters on each corner to kind of help put a little bit of weight on them. But anything they touch, there's a chance they can glue to it. So if you get some quarters or something like that, that will help hold the corners down. But don't think, oh, well, if I put some butter on them, then they won't stick or non-cookies. Don't do that because that'll just make it worse.
Has somebody done that? Come on.
I guarantee. Some of the things that we see in and some of the letters we get, I'm just thinking, really?
Yeah.
We're not all professionals. So, if you have questions, don't ever assume anything. I tell my 14-year-old this all the time. If you think something needs to be fixed, don't just try fixing it yourself. Talk to a professional and have them walk you through it. It may be something really easy.
We've got another email here. This one is from Vera. She said, I found some old slides that I'd like to save and store properly. How do I do that until I'm ready to scan them?
That's an excellent question. That's really, really good. In fact, at Roots Tech several weeks ago, we had people come up and ask us very similar questions. What you always want to do, your friend, is cool, dark, and dry. That's the best thing to do. Keep stuff in a cool, dry, dark place. If you have a damp basement, you don't want to use a damp basement. Don't put them in your attic because it goes hot and cold.
So this depends really almost on where you live, right?
Exactly. If you're in extreme cold places or extreme hot places, you need to put them in a climate-controlled place. And as we said years ago, don't put them on a shelf in your closet if you have a heating duct going either underneath the shelf, along the shelf, or above the shelf, because that'll do the same thing. So what you want to do is you want to get some cheesecloth from a good craft store and get some uncooked long-grained rice. Emphasize non-cooked long-grained rice.
Right.
So what you'll do is you'll put this in the little pouch that you've got out of the cheesecloth and then tie it with string or rope. Do not use a rubber band. Do not use tape. Don't use anything like that because they'll come apart. Then the rice will get mixed up. The reason for this is going to absorb your moisture out of the Ziploc bag you have and make them a lot better. Or if you have those things left over from stereos that says, do not eat this,
right.
The silica things, they're the same thing. But before you use them, pop them into a toaster oven for about 15, 20 minutes to absorb any water out. Wait for them to totally dry out and cool down, and then put them in there. Either one will work great.
Wow. And that'll keep them dry, and then you can store them until you're ready to scan it.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks so much, Tom. And, of course, if you have a question for Tom, you can always email us at asktom@tmcplace.com. Talk to you next week.
My pleasure.
And that is a wrap for this week's show. And this segment has been brought to you by RootsMagic.com. Thanks so much to Michael Henderson for coming on and sharing his incredible journey through the Creoles of Louisiana back to 6 documented Revolutionary soldiers. Amazing story. If you missed any of it, catch the podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. It's free. It's the Weekly Genie. Sign up at ExtremeGenes.com. Talk to you again next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.